Chris, I'll let you open things up and get the conversation going. But first, just wanted to thank everybody for joining. Thank you to the panelists for taking the time to do this for the LSI community. We're incredibly excited about the upcoming summit. It's going to have close to 2,000 executives, over 500 investors and strategics confirmed as of this morning, 700 startup companies. Truly is going to be a gathering of movers and shakers in medtech from across the globe. And we're thrilled to have this session, which is going to be very practical for investors, strategics, and folks that are attending looking for deals, great opportunities at the summit. How do you navigate everything that's happening with all the moving parts to make it as productive as you can going forward? So, Chris, I'll pass it over to you to open things up, get the panel going, and I'll be in the background with questions. Everyone in the attendees should see a Q&A button down there. Feel free to submit questions. I'll try to synthesize and bring those questions into the conversation and make sure that we get as many answered as possible.
Great. Henry, thank you so much. Appreciate you guys putting this on and all the hard work behind the scenes to pull off the LSI conference, the best med tech conference in the year. But thanks for pulling that together. And thanks to all the panelists for joining and taking time out of your day. I'm Chris Campbell, managing partner of Precision, and I will be moderating the panel today. So maybe to kick us off, as we prepare each of us for LSI, maybe I'll just throw it out to the panel to quickly take 30 seconds, introduce yourself, what fund or company you're coming from, and then what does success look like for you this year at LSI? So maybe I will start with Nick.
Okay. Hey, great to meet everybody. Nick Pachuta, based in Colorado. I was a surgeon for 10 years, 25 years in industry, 10 years at J&J, leading external innovation. Now I'm a general partner at Neovate Capital, $100 million seed and A round, a Series A fund. We call it a surgical fund, a little bit of med tech and a little bit of biotech, but all for people that do procedures. My history been a bit of at LSI, both as a strategic, a startup company, as well as a fund. For me, success looks like when I come out that there's maybe 2 or 3 great companies that I think I'm really excited about, the CEO, the technology, the plan, and the opportunity, and I definitely want to follow up. There's probably 5 to 10 that I think are interesting that we should probably learn more about. And then to be clear with everybody else that what's not a great fit and maybe refer them to somebody else that they're a better fit for.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. Tamir.
Thanks, Chris. So, hi, everybody. Tamir, I lead J&J's medtech investments on the West Coast. I'm part of JGDC, which is J&J's corporate venture capital. This is my 14th year with J&J. I've been attending LSI since the beginning with all of my partners in crime here and do so happily again. So pleasure meeting everybody.
Thanks, Tamir. Lisa.
Hello, Lisa Carmel. I'm based in San Francisco Bay Area, and I'm with Mayo Clinic. In 2025, Mayo Clinic merged a lot of the ventures, corp dev, tech dev, all into one group called One Business Development Group. So, and I lead one of the work units, that's the strategic partnerships, alongside my colleague Nir here, who will be introducing himself. A pleasure to be here. And I also have been coming from the beginning of the LSI conferences, and they're fantastic.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lisa. Nir.
Nir Goldenberg, Senior Director for Business Development with Neovate Ventures, the Department of Business Development, Area Clinic. I think success for us that coming to LSI because we are able to lead the event conference with a clear, I would say, pipeline, a very good pipeline for a year. So a lot of practice is happening in March. Typically, there is nice conversion rate we can you're having on the ground, the other side. Deals we're executing within the year. So that's success for us to see it. The event is translated into a strong pipeline for you here. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Nir. Greg.
Hey everyone, Greg Banker. I'm with Pensana Capital. We're a medtech focused VC firm. We have a team of investment team of 11 people spread between Minneapolis, where I'm based, DC, and California. We're currently investing out of our third fund, which is a $425 million fund. Our mandate is medtech exclusively, and we invest across the whole life cycle, everything from development through commercialization and everything in between. Had the opportunity to be at LSI the last couple of years. Really appreciate all the work that goes into putting on that conference. And I'd say a successful event is several days of back-to-back meetings with everybody in the ecosystem, entrepreneurs, investors, and strategics. So really appreciate the diversity of the audience.
Thanks, Greg. And Charlie.
Hi, Charlie Allen. I've got an engineering background, helped develop a sensor technology, and I'm the CEO of one of the startups, Maya One, that's been at this conference several years now. We're building a new vital sign for limb viability, and then through all the work that's been done here, raised funds from family offices and different groups. So it's been success for me is obviously finding investors that have interest in what we're doing, and then connecting with CEOs and the ecosystem to keep pushing things forward.
Awesome. Thanks, Charlie. Great. Well, thanks again for everyone being on this panel. And, as we all know, I think Greg mentioned it, LSI is an amazing conference that brings together the entire ecosystem, from innovators to investors to strategics, all in one spot, all leaning in to see medtech innovation accelerate. So maybe though, to start, certainly at the conference, it's full contact. You've got lots of meetings all the time, but even pre-conference, there's a lot of activities. So maybe I'd like to start there. How do you prepare for LSI as an investor? And maybe Greg, I would start with you. As you start getting these bombardments of meeting requests already, probably through the app, how do you review and how do you analyze what meetings you take? What are the lens you look at maximizing the meetings that you have at LSI?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'd say that the apps have been a fantastic tool. I think really, really well organized, and so appreciate having access to that. But for us, I'd say, probably our prioritization criteria, I'd say like any firm, we're often filtering things by a couple things. First would just be size arrays. Like most firms, we have a minimum check size. We're often looking to get to work. The next would be stage. We will invest across the whole life cycle, as I mentioned earlier, but there's certain categories where we're willing to go earlier versus later. And so that's a helpful filter. And then I'd say last is sector. Obviously there's certain sectors where we have existing theses or have spent time in the past. And so there are areas of interest. And so I'd say those are probably the three upfront that we kind of use to prioritize the list initially.
Awesome. That makes sense. Nick, maybe coming off of Greg a little bit, how do you look from a Neva Capital perspective, different size fund? How do you look to triage companies coming in the door or through the app?
Yeah, I mean, and I advise a lot of startups as well. Look, what you don't want to do, as a fund, it's hard to not try. You could meet with everybody if you wanted to. And as a startup, you could just blitz every single potential investor, and that's not productive, right? So I think you have to be intentional. Again, it's a full contact sport all day, every day, and into the evenings. But I try to be intentional. So on the app and then the connection portal, I do try to take time up front to be clear about who we are, what we're looking for, generally what stage, what sectors, and be careful coming in. And that enables people to use the portal and use the app to connect, to make better connections. Number two, I try to take control of my own calendar, right? If you don't take control, you're going to be inundated every 15 minutes, which is fine, but it doesn't give you enough time to actually think. And some companies you want to spend a little more time with. So I do control my calendar in advance of when do I want to have the most meetings. And what I've been doing lately also is saving time, because there's so many spontaneous meetings that you have that aren't scheduled. So I'll save time on Wednesday and Thursday to meet people that maybe aren't on the calendar, but I meet, through the first few days. And I do take the time when people send, the meeting requests, if they're well thought out and sometimes personal in their introduction, trying to why does it make sense to meet with, my fund versus Greg's fund or J&J? I try to take the time to screen and see what's a good fit to make sure that the meetings are the most productive. And I think, just again, being intentional about the use of the portal and what you put in there, how you control your calendar, and then try to take the time to make sure you're having the meetings with the right people that you respect your own time and everybody else's.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. Maybe Tamir, you could add a perspective from like a corporate investor perspective. How do you prioritize your meetings and how you look for those strategic adjacencies?
Yeah, so maybe following up on Nick's kind of message, right? I'd separate it between an investor and a company presenting, right? And there's obviously going to be a learning experience, especially for people who come in for the first time. I think the biggest benefit, if I compare this to a very jungle-like conference like JPM, where everybody and their, remote sister is in the same vicinity, the biggest advantage of the two biggest advantages, I guess, of LSI are one, the atmosphere is much more relaxed. Yes, it is a conference, but people are not rushing between the hills of San Francisco to meet their next meeting, which will be 50 to 30 minutes, and getting stuck in an elevator. So take advantage of that. People are much more relaxed. There's time to, hang out and network during breakfasts and lunches and coffee breaks and dinners, and there's gala events and whiskey tastings and wine tastings. Get as many invites as you can and get friendly. That would be my first tip. Secondly, I would say because everybody's in the same venue, there's this huge advantage of, or at least most of them are staying within the same venue, of not having to run away and kind of, oh, I have to get to the Uber or get to the airport today. People mostly come in for 3 days. So take advantage of that, because that is the rare conference that it happens in. Separately, from an investor or a strategic investor's perspective, right, we have a very clear mandate of what we should invest or what we should invest in. There are areas J&J is not active in and unlikely to go back into. So, at least the advantage I have is I know what I want to see and what I don't want to see. I will say to some of the strategic investors or the early investors here, you are going to get bombarded with requests regardless of how much specificity you put on your profile, right? And it's the nature of the business. You see this across any conference. It's not an LSI problem, it's a conference problem. It's a natural part of the ecosystem we're in. My philosophy has always been, be friendly, be courteous, even if it's irrelevant to J&J. Say it's not a strategic area, and just say I'm happy to say hi, because truthfully I am. And you just may never know when you're going to meet that person next in his next endeavor. So as Nick outlined, I think as Greg outlined as well, this is a tight-knit community, medtech, and we try to be very helpful to one another. Even if it's not in your mandate, I'm sure there's somebody you can connect to and kind of say, hey, have you talked to X? Because he could be potentially interested. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's good advice, Tamir. Maybe Lisa, from your perspective, especially coming from Mayo, where you have kind of clinical interest as well and all the experience Mayo brings, how do you look at clinical signals that startups are presenting or their KOL engagement as you're looking to take meetings? How important is that to you about some of their clinical background prior to the meeting?
Of course, we love the diversity, and we're always looking for that too, because we're looking to match make these technologies, startups, these investments, and I think equally important to listening to what the startups presenting is meeting with the other VCs, and that's what we're looking to do, because we're looking to, co-invest, and we do want that diversity. I had one startup just at our one of our summits, that well, I thought we were going to pass on the technology because the person that the startup brought it in took it directly to one of our thought leaders, and the thought leaders like, yeah, it's robotic, but I can do it faster without it, and that's when another thought leader looked at it and said, it's the wrong application. They're asking for the wrong application. It should be something else. So I think getting a variety of different perspectives is what we do, and we're always looking to walk it in and match make it. I will say to your earlier question, though, Mayo's going to have 9 people there. I didn't even know. No, 10 people there from Mayo. So you will not have trouble connecting with Mayo. So we actually developed an agent that so we could just segment, because we invest across every vertical. And so everyone's got their segmented lists that they're going to be seeking meetings with.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Lisa. And maybe Near kind of followed up to just the size Mayo's bringing. How best should investors try to diversify a meeting with different startups or different potential investment opportunities Do you like to meet together with multiple people, or you guys divide up across all the different startups?
So we divided from some third the agent we have developed, which is it's super nice to do this modern tools in order to truly define strategy for us. We cover the whole spectrum. I think you guys know that we are very opportunistic when we are investing and collaborating with companies across the whole spectrum, from drug development all the way through medtech, AI, robotics, diagnostics, and so on and so forth. So when we are coming to the other side, we are dividing and conquering about 10 people on the ground, and we will come engage with different portfolios or sub-segments, and find what you're, to refer to your previous questions, we are striving to find the most prominent companies within the different segments. Companies that are showing strong signals, clinical signals, come to the table with, groups, clinical evidence to show that their science and technology are different, that they can bring new solutions, cures, monitoring tools, diagnostic tools, therapeutic tools to patients, something that is different and meaningful and impactful for patients. We're looking for those companies proactively, and we will also engage in appropriate manners, companies are bringing the right resources and assets and funding to the table. So that's how we go about it.
Awesome. Thank you, Nir. And maybe Charlie, from the startup perspective, the innovator perspective, looking to get money from the investors around this panel, what have you found most useful information investors can provide you as an innovator looking to raise capital, and you've been successful in raising capital? What's productive, something an investor can provide, and ways you can interact?
Yeah, I think just like candid feedback on what they're looking for, what's necessary to get to the next stage, and what they've seen be successful. It's a long-term process. There's building a relationship with all these things. So I'll reach out to some of the investors that I've had built relationships with to get that feedback early before going to the meeting. So at least people are warm, and if there's interest to dive deeper, then we'll use the time that's there. Also meeting with other CEOs to help try to get warm leads into other venture groups and all of that stuff. So it's a lot of networking, and it's always a good time.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really key point of building relationships. Business is done based on relationships, and that's really important. And building that network over time, even if the investor might be a tad later in investment cycle, you eventually get there and grow to that point and need those relationships. So maybe if we can pivot a bit from preparing for the LSI conference, and again, if we said already, use the app. The app is really phenomenal, and there is data coming from the app. So if you need that data, reach out to Henry and team. There's a lot of data available to investors to analyze the companies that will be at LSI. But at the meeting, it's back-to-back meeting. It's a full contact sport. So maybe Nick, I could throw a question to you. How best do you utilize the short time you have as an investor to try to figure out and test? What questions do you ask? How do you figure out if this is a good partner?
Yep. If it's the first time I'm meeting someone, it's different than if it's a follow-up, obviously. But the first time, I'm not looking for the PowerPoint, honestly, especially in a 15-minute meeting. I'm looking, whoever I'm meeting with, are they passionate, and are they telling a clear story about the amazing thing that they're doing? In the first 30 seconds, are they saying something that's got me hooked? And then I ask, okay, well, tell me how you're going to do that amazing thing. And then all I really want to hear is that you've got a plan and you're thinking about value creation, and you're not spending that 15 minutes telling me how whatever you're working on, how it works. That to me is for, meeting number 2 or 3. I want to hear about your passion and why you think you're going to change the world, the amazing thing you're going to do to affect that change, and do you have a plan? And if you can articulate that without notes and without the PowerPoint, but just, I want to build that relationship and see why you've dropped everything you're doing to drive this thing across the finish line and, change patients' lives. That's what I want to hear. And if you've got me hooked, then I want to hear the rest of the story. So to me, how I think get the best out of LSI and out of these individual meetings with startups is, creating I would say a relaxed environment. Someone said it earlier, that relax, tell us the story of why you did this, because, you know, it's the most important thing in your life. And, you know, I think the why and the what you're doing are more important than the how. So I'm looking for people that are passionate and can tell a story and can get me hooked right away.
Awesome. That's super insightful. Maybe Lisa, I could turn it to you a little bit about that passion. Most of these
Yeah.
innovators are passionate. They're either clinical background or technical background. What do you want to hear about that as an investor in Mayo? And what do you want to wait to hear more information about? What are you looking for in those meetings?
You know, I think I've got my ears pricked up for big, bold, disruptive innovation. We're investing $9 billion in hospitals of the future, with 6 billion being spent at Rochester, fully, you know, roboticized, automated, so forth. So we need and it's going to open in 2030. So we need partners to help iterate, to help design and bring those technologies to these hospital of the future. So I think if I hear that it's a big, bold, disruptive, robotic, automated, AI enabled, a lot of those key things are very compelling. And also, I was let's see, I think that uh, oh yeah, if they have a prior Mayo collaboration, that's very important, and we always extend that courtesy to listen in and spend a little extra time too.
Awesome. That's super helpful, Lisa. Maybe Charlie, to you as a CEO that's pitched repeatedly in these sessions, what questions do you find are most helpful from investors? And question you wish investors would ask you as you're sitting across the table in these high intensity settings.
Yeah, I think like going a layer deeper of really trying to understand the issue that you're dealing with, and trying to get you to unpack kind of the framework of how you're scaling up your whatever you're trying to do. So solve the bigger problems. So on our end, like there's a lot of challenges every day. Mayo collaboration is one thing. We actually did something with Dr. Morrison in there, and that was really cool because that unlocked a whole new application for the technology that we didn't think was possible. And so, anyways, it's fun to see kind of the people go on the journey with you, and then see how like that they've retained some of the information from the last time you met with them, and they're willing to go a layer deeper. And then leading questions that you think that you're going in the right direction is when they're willing to, think about a beta room, think about the next step, trying to figure out when they're going to meet again, so that you feel like you've got something moving along.
Awesome. I think that's great, Charlie. Maybe Tamira, to you, as you meet with founders like Charlie, as an investor, what are you looking for that the team understands commercial reality? What questions are you trying to ask these startups as an investor? Like, do they understand what it takes?
Yeah. So, I mean, in a lot of cases, at least the meetings I will take, right, are the people who understand the connection to J&J. So trying to understand why this is valuable to us. And, I will have my bias and my opinion, but we may have different opinions, and trying to understand why they think it's a fit for us. And, it's great to hear. I think separately, any investor deck that you're going to look at has wildly inaccurate or unrealistic revenue projections, right? And it's almost a rule at this point that you're going to have to see this and completely discount this 50 to 70%. So we're not looking for that. It's just really trying to understand the strategy in terms of who's your call point, what physician you're trying to sell, what value prop this is, how is this differentiated from what's on the market? Is it transformational? Is it incremental? Try to understand where you're positioning yourself, and that helps me advocate for this internally, or just say, listen, it's great, but we want to see X before we engage further, right? So it could be clinical data, it could be commercial traction, it could be investor interest, because we feel like we're not in a position to lead this and we want somebody else to lead this. So trying to see what type of validation we need to see to believe, and hopefully trying to distill that in the 15 to 30-minute meetings. I think in most cases it's doable. I tend to do my homework on a lot of those companies, but if as a founder or CEO you feel like the investor you're talking to needs some education, I would advise to maybe send some materials in advance of the meeting. It could be a one-pager. It doesn't have to be a 30 slide deck, but just so everybody's on the same page before the meeting, so you can actually spend it discussing rather than reviewing slides as Nick outlined earlier.
Yeah, that's perfect. Great. Maybe a question for you. As you're sitting in these one-on-one sessions, lots of information, you've got a whole slew of meetings every day. What are you trying to figure out as an investor of should I go take a second meeting after LSI? What are the things you're trying to figure out in those short meetings?
Was that
Yeah,
Nick or Greg? I didn't see it.
It was great.
Oh,
Okay.
No, great. Yeah.
Yeah, it's honestly a lot of, what's been mentioned already. I think if I kind of think about three high level questions, we're always trying to figure out really early on in a pitch. It's, why does the world need this product? What's the problem you're solving? How significant is it? And can you quantify, how your ability to potentially affect that and influence it? I think the second is, maybe to Damir's point, a very objective assessment of the realizable market opportunity. How many patients you think are truly addressable with your technology? It's often not the same thing as a TAM, and so people who've done a lot of sophisticated work to drill down what that is and have kind of a data driven framework to support that. That's often very attractive. And then I think it's just all other forward looking aspects of the life cycle of the technologies. You think about product development, regulatory approval, reimbursement, market access, and market and commercial. Someone who's really done the homework to understand other case studies in the category, similarities with other technologies, and has talked to advisors, other executives, and can really speak to a well-traveled path by others and why their experience may or may not be similar, and how they're going to approach each of those different milestones.
Awesome. I think that's great. Tamir, were you going to add anything else to that?
No, I just wasn't
Okay.
thinking the question was for me. Right?
Okay. Sorry. Maybe if we could pivot a little bit to thinking about the capital ask coming from these startups, but also the opportunity to syndicate investment with other investors. Maybe Nir, you can speak to a bit about what Mayo looks for, kind of that co-investment opportunities, and what gives you confidence on the capital asks, and just walk us through a bit how you view that as an investor. So, sorry, Nir, maybe it's just me. I don't not hear you.
Yeah, we had some audio problems near before we were having.
Yes.
Hi, Dan. You hear me okay?
Yeah.
There. Okay. And sorry for my technical issue here. So I think, for us, I think everybody knows that Alex, we are not a financial investor, right? We're strategic investors from Milton, right? So, we invest super early. We start do new venture formation deals typically around 10, max really 15 a year. And then beyond that, we invest from seed to seed. We do not need rounds, and we need to have that strategic angle. What would represent a good fit for MLP, right? So in that context, when you're approaching us, and we also help you to get to that right syndication, right? We would, if we're interested in pursuing a leader, right, we would, need to think who can lead around, for example, how can we follow? And then sometimes if we are really excited and want to name companies, we would proactively help to secure our leads and then follow or join the syndicate. Our sweet spot from capital deployment perspective, which would be, I would say 1 to 5 million. And that's our sweet spot. We could go bigger or biggest investment target under our strategic founders 20. But again, sweet spot really 1 to 5. Maybe like 7 recently. And then from regarding number of investment deals, we would do between 20 to 25 investment deals a year, so we're a pretty active investor. But again, we need to make sure we understand our investment criteria, and this is true for any interaction with any investor. And then strategize together, help us to understand if they're interested, how we can create like syndicate and move forward with the potential dealer and what will great collaborative structure.
Fantastic. Thank you, Nir. That makes sense. Maybe Nick, to your fund and Neovate in particular, you also invest earlier on. What are you looking for as an investor thinking through your capital deployment? How much money you plan to put out as your fund? What are you looking from the founders and the startups to determine are they raising the right amount of money? Let's put it that way.
Right. I mean, I think that's an important question, especially for startups, about what key things you want to touch on? Because as an investor, I've got my triage criteria of sort of what's the right fit. And at Neovate, we like to be lead investors. As long as it has a surgical application, it's in scope for us. But I'm looking for, does the CEO get me excited about the story? Are they at the right stage? And we typically invest either right before clinical proof of concept or right before regulatory clearance or approval. I'm looking for, as many have said, transformational category defining bold technology that's also paired with a thoughtful go-to-market plan. As I will always say, it is never too early to think about how you're going to actually commercialize this and get it reimbursed. And then is it in the right valuation range? So, I'm ticking the boxes of, is the CEO someone I'm going to be excited about? Is it stage appropriate? Is it something we would like to lead and dig into? Is it transformational enough? Is it disruptive enough? And do they have a good plan going forward? And is the valuation range within, a close enough fit for us to have that next conversation? And if it's not, what I like to do is give the direct feedback there live, right? It's not a fit for me, maybe not, but it might be a great fit for Tamir or for Greg or for Nir. So I think it's great for all of us that as you're building relationships, maybe you want to see this company down the road, or maybe it's a great fit for you now. But if it's not, there's 2,000 other people at the meeting, and I'm sure there's someone else that we all know that, you could connect a dot for someone and leave them with as much value as they're trying to prove to us. So I do try to give the feedback live and connect them to someone if it's not a good fit for me.
Yeah. Awesome, Nick. That's good insight. And maybe to that point of passing it off to, say, Vinsana, and you get a message from Nick, Greg. What are you trying to better understand? You're not doing full diligence at LSI, but you're trying to get us some insight into their capital request. What are you trying to understand about their funding request? What are the red flags you're looking for as an investor in these meetings?
Yeah, so I'd say, probably don't have the time to cover it all in the meeting, but I'd say, we often, we want to know what the raise is, what the rationale is for how they landed there. But as we dig in, our diligence is not just, on what that round gets you to and takes you to. It's what do the next 2 to 3 rounds look like. And so when we're doing our diligence and underwriting, we're creating a model that looks at the next several subsequent rounds, and trying to really work with management teams and our diligence to get alignment on that. What do those future requirements look like, especially if things take longer than we all anticipate, and kind of do a backwards model to kind of say, okay, if even with our plan, if that all goes according to plan, do we end up with, an exit range that we think makes sense given the risk profile and timeline here? I think the biggest red flag is probably, irrational optimism, right? So going back to kind of the case study comment I made earlier, and kind of the importance of knowing the case studies, just to give an extreme example, if similar products in your product category have raised several $100 million in your pitches, you're going to raise $20 million to go from 0 to break even. We're naturally going to be really skeptical, right? And so I think you have to come at that analysis in a really objective and data driven way, and have some supporting rationale for how you landed there, and really pressure test it, because you can make everything work in Excel, but we want to know what happens after the Excel model gets locked. So
yeah, love it. Awesome. Thank you, Greg. And maybe Tamir, from a strategic perspective, as what are you looking for beyond just financial returns? Certainly you want financial returns, but what else are you looking for as a strategic investor?
Yeah. So, I mean, financials are obviously kind of our second priority, right? Why we invest is really strategic. So, what I do and literally doing as we speak, not in this panel, but immediately thereafter is, I've asked Henry to provide me the list of companies presenting, right? So I will filter all of those that are in ophthalmology and reach out to my vision colleagues. I'll do the same on the cardio side and on the surgery side. And I'm looking for 2 things. One, ideally this gem that they've not seen at a academy or at a conference, and it was either too early or they didn't have time, and say, all right, I'm happy to meet this company and see, all right, I see a fit. I understand why this is a good tuck in, plug into our existing portfolio products. That is one. Secondly, we're looking for something that, especially looking at most of the companies at that stage at LSI, they're usually not, the late stage public, 60 million in revenue commercial companies. There are, but less of those in LSI. and say, should our business parties meet with them as well, or have they, and maybe we can help. So really trying to see where JJDC as a venture investor can help provide value to the company and bring it closer to J&J if it's not already close to a certain extent. So really trying to play that role.
That makes sense. Maybe I'll take a live question that was posted from Jonathan about returns and multiple and timelines. Maybe we'll give everyone on the panel their perspective. What are you looking for in terms of return, the multiple? How fast are you looking to get returns? Any perspectives on that? Or are you trying to evaluate that at LSI, or that you're worried about that post LSI?
I don't know if I'm necessarily looking for, what that return's going to be. I'm looking for, have I hit enough check boxes of what I'm looking for? So should I have another meeting, right? I don't try to do any of the math there live. I just want to see that we're in the right ballpark and you're doing something amazing. So, to me, it's not about trying to do the calculus. It's more about, do I like the person and the story, and does it fit enough for our fund that I want to introduce them to other people on my fund to learn more and dig in?
Awesome.
Anybody? Can you hear me okay? Reasonable?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Sam, I think for sure not on the ground at LSI, not we don't do those calculations. We do that then later when there is more clarity on the deal structure itself, different components of the deal cell on a case-by-case basis. So yeah, completely agree. We would just look to find that any part that spark, that Jen, as you mentioned, something that we haven't seen so far, something that is very unique within a specific segment. And then, we will engage in continuing, then returns and hitting targets will come later on. And these are things that we can also work on together that are with the company.
Awesome. Thanks, Neil. Any other perspective on that question? Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, I think that it depends is the answer on, the firm refocus, the strategy, which is not a satisfactory answer, I know, but it's the truth. But I would agree. It's not something I think you're really getting into much at LSI. I think you're more trying to just understand the vision and the plan, the strategy, and the capital requirements. But I think if you're to paint with a broad brush, I think most venture capital funds are 10-year funds, and they're usually deploying that capital in the first 2 to 3 years, at least with the initial check. And so the idea is you're going to be holding companies on average, call it kind of 3 to 6 years in a perfect world. And so I think kind of goes back to that working backwards comment that you can kind of tell based on some of the stories in the initial discussions, is this going to be, a 10 to 15 year journey or a, 3 to 7, and you just do your best to try and understand what's really required to get from here to an exit. And it's not a perfect science by any means.
Yeah, fantastic. Good insight, Craig. And maybe Charlie, to that point, as a startup, trying to articulate how much money you need from all these different size of types of investors, from Neovate or Mayo or JGDC or Insana. How have you found the best way to present your capital needs to investors?
I think the same thing is what the investors are trying to do, work your way backwards from what the next milestone is, at least for this. And so you're trying to raise to a certain place. So you got to do your homework on what the fund is that would make this most sense for the amount of money you're trying to do to get to the next big milestone. And then articulate that message. Sometimes you're meeting people that aren't the right fit, but you're just starting to make that connection. So trying to be like starting there to try to get feedback. I mean, sometimes you'll say, hey, I'm raising way more money than you actually think you can, just to try to get a conversation going. But for the most part, you're trying to understand kind of the framework of what they're looking for, so you can work your way backwards to make sure you hit the right milestones before that point, so that when you go show up again with them and say, look, I did what I said I was going to do, and now this is what I'm doing next.
Yeah.
Ideally try to paint a linear line, but it's never linear. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be nice. It never is. So maybe we'll fast forward. We've had a great LSI. You met with 100 some companies, and both formal meetings and informal. And now it's the Monday after LSI, and maybe we'll just go around the panel for this question. What do you do on the Monday after LSI? How do you triage? What's your process? And as an investor, how do you prioritize what could be hundreds of follow-up activities. So maybe Lisa, I'll start with you.
Vacation? No, I'm just no, just no, we regroup and we have certain things that they're technical things we're looking for. We're matchmaking, we're digging out of our inboxes. But just like everybody else, there's the ones that are we got to hop on these fast prioritized opportunities. But because we have so many of us coming, we'll have a big debrief and then go from there. I think it's a little different for us because we're looking for collaborations that may lead to an investment or not. And so there's a lot of matchmaking that's involved with our clinician innovators internally and assessing if it's going to be a good strategic collaboration for Mayo.
Awesome. Thank you, Lisa. Near anything else you would add to Mayo's approach?
Oh, just to second this out, we would regroup once we're back, and then we will bring selected potential opportunities to our teams, and eventually for the top prioritized ones, we would kind of find and assign internal kind of mini fiber team that would have someone who is under Lisa's team, like a partnership manager, or licensing manager, an investment manager, or technology development manager, a small team, typically 3 to 4 folks from our department, but to then continue to work with the company all the way up for across the field. And so that's our approach.
Perfect. Tamir, from JGDC's perspective, obviously you're looking for the long-term relationships, and you have multiple people across JJ at LSI. How do you prioritize who you engage with after? Do you wait for the startup or do you proactively reach out? What's the approach?
I guess it's a 50-50 or 60-40 or whatever uncharacteristically statistically significant difference you can call. I think some startups, it really depends who else from J&J attends, right? Sometimes I would have a BD colleague from one franchise or another. So if there is a startup that I know is potentially high target or like a very high area of interest, I will ask the relevant counterpart to join that meeting if we can schedule that, and if not, and if you recall, in the days you were part of J&J, we had divided and conquered in most cases. At this stage where we're 3-ish weeks away, I try to already set up or at least put the ones that I am really caring for in terms of either it's ex-colleagues or just companies that I know I need to spend time with. Same goes for investors, either those that I've not caught up with at JPM or otherwise. And then whatever time is available is, free season for everybody. I'm happy to meet, whether if it's relevant or not. To your earlier question, I guess, in terms of following up, and Lisa's comment was well positioned, I guess. Some of us even have an American Heart Association event on the Friday after LSI. So it's even a worse verdict, I guess, for some of us, and March is a full travel month for me. But my trick has always been, it's a whirlwind, right? You're meeting 100 people at a minimum over the 3.5, 4 days of the conference. Take notes. I know all of us have good memories and everything. Take as many notes as you can. And then my trick, at least, has been on the flight back to the Bay Area, which I know is just 1.5 hours. I just, draft all my follow-up emails and have them scheduled to be sent on the Monday. Because people don't want to see the emails on the Friday and on the way back. So on the Monday, people will read that. So that's been my secret weapon over the years. May not work for everybody, but yeah.
That's perfect. Thanks, Tamir. Nick, how about you? Monday after LSI, what's your approach?
Yep. So we typically stay an extra day when everyone else is golfing, and we're doing our debrief and making sure number one, everyone's in our CRM. Number two, that I've typically categorized sort of A, B, C, D. A, I love it. I've probably already scheduled a follow-up meeting with you, or I've met with you a second time already. Or, B, I love it, but you're too early for us, but I want to see you down the road, and I'm going to tell you that. D is where I have questions, like, hey, we're going to have to learn more, have to dig in, or, there's something you probably need to address before you come back to us. And I'll try to communicate that. And then finally, if it's not a fit for me, but it might be a fit for somebody else, then, I'm going to try to at least, make that suggestion during the meeting. But, we're doing triage right away, because if you don't do it in the first couple of days, you're not going to do it. Or it's going to, someone's going to ping you 3 weeks later saying, remember, you were supposed to do that thing, or I sent you my deck. And, so I try to get them out of the way early. So that's why we debrief early. And I even in the meeting, you're going to know, do I want to have that next meeting, or am I, is it down the road? Or am I sending you to somebody else?
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. Maybe Charlie, for you, what have you found effective from investors of how they follow up after LSI?
Yeah, I mean, if you're getting a follow-up email from an investor, you're on the right track to begin with. Yeah. That's rare, but it's a really good sign if that's happening. If you've already booked a meeting in the meeting, then that's great. If you're seeing them after the meeting and they're willing to have a conversation, they're excited about digging deeper, you're on the right track. So I think, any of that happening is a really good sign that things are moving in the right direction. If it's the reverse, yeah, there's less is more sometimes, and you got to find the right time to really push. Really, when there's some big change in what happened.
Yeah. Awesome. And maybe to the startup founders that might listen to it, don't give up if you don't see initial follow-up. It's a relationship that lasts long term. And so next conference, you're going to see them again and continue to be passionate about what you love. So just a side comment to founders, that passion, as you've already heard, it's what piques the interest of investors, to see your passion, see your commitment to your tech. Maybe Greg, for you, how do you triage Monday after LSI?
Yeah, so I'd say like a lot of firms, we have a weekly meeting with our whole group to kind of discuss deal pipeline, and ours actually happens to be on Monday, so that helps in this case. But maybe a piece of context is I would say again, like a lot of groups, on every single week we have 20 to 30 deals on our sheet, and so we have 20 to 30 deals on our sheet before LSI, and those same 20 to 30 deals are going to be on our sheet after LSI. And so I think the exercise we try and really do is how do you integrate all the inbound and deal flow from LSI and use that to kind of reprioritize the list. And the easiest one is just when are things actually actionable. But that's a helpful starting point. But I would say we do really appreciate when founders do follow up with us, even if it's multiple times, just because there's a lot of inbound, and we do our best to get back. But I'd say we want you to bug us and to follow up, and we will get you feedback. So just be persistent.
Awesome. That's good insight, Greg. Well, I know that we're getting near the end of the panel. I'd love to go through one kind of rapid fire question to all the panelists. If an investor can do only one thing differently before LSI, what should that be? Is there going to LSI, prepare for LSI? If they're going to do one thing differently to make it a great LSI and get a great deal coming out of LSI, what should that investor do? I'll start with Charlie.
I think if there are companies that are of interest that like to engage quickly and book those meetings so you can start getting information earlier, so that you've got you're not taking the time to learn what the technology is, you're getting deeper into the conversation.
Oh, I love it. Great. Nir.
Well, I agree. Think the right plan. So just have a plan. We refer to our divide and conquer masterpiece plan. So have a plan and then start engaging before, as Sean mentioned, so you can come prepared to the meeting. At the end, those meetings are so short. 15 or sometimes 30 minutes. So if you're well prepared and have some background on the company, on the team, on topology, you can achieve more at the same time frame. So let's see.
Perfect. Lisa.
I think I'm stealing Nick's, but I'm glad you asked me this first. But just like Nir said, have a plan, but then block out chunks of time for those amazing surprises. Because some of the best meetings are like where you're caught on the fly and you're like really drawn into the technology, but it's hard if you're completely booked and you have no room. And besides, you're sort of brain dead at a certain point that day anyway. So block out time for those great surprises.
Yeah, I love it. Tamir.
Yeah, I'll follow all of my colleagues here. Don't do back to back from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. It's doable, but you're gonna hate yourself after that. So, find time to relax, have a cup of coffee, have lunch. Your most meaningful conversations are gonna be when people are relaxed and having fun. And the other aspect I'll say is don't try to do everything in the 3 days because you're not by definition going to be able to. So set expectations in advance. We're not going to get 300 investors to court you. Take it easy, enjoy the conference, and learn for the next time.
Awesome. Greg.
Yeah, it's a smart group here, so it's hard to add something unique. But I would say, I would say probably the one learning for me is, plan to leverage the LSI app for, scheduling things after LSI, and just recognize that you're not gonna be able to meet everybody in person, but just the benefit of making the online connection should enable you to, be one step closer to maybe doing a Zoom or something afterwards. So just plan to, that's something I'm certainly going to do this year, is just plan to have some follow-ups after the conference, where you're going to have more time and more availability.
Awesome. Nick.
Yep. So Lisa did a great job of reading my mind. I think if you haven't been there, you're going to realize very quickly that 2,000 people in a beautiful environment that are captive and basically don't leave for 4 days, you've got them. So be intentional, both as a fund as well as a startup. Be intentional about who you want to meet. Don't worry that you might not have got the meeting scheduled through the app. And for the funds or the startups, be opportunistic, right? There's 4 or 5 days to get to the people you want to get to. I love the people that are walking around with the spreadsheet with the pictures of the fund they want to meet with. It shows you did your homework. But to me, same thing that Lisa said, sometimes the best meetings are the ones that are someone that's passing you in the hallway, right? They just stop you, say, hey, I just want to talk to you for a second, but they've already done their homework and they know why they're stopping you in that hallway. Just keep an open mind, because you might see the most amazing thing you've ever seen in your life, and it's someone that's at the cocktail party or the bar, or just passing you in the hallway. So, take the time to be courteous and hear, because they may have planned 3 weeks to have that 30 seconds in the hallway with you. So just keep an open mind for people, because there's some amazing things that are happening every single day, every single minute. So give yourself time to find those engagements as well.
Awesome. Yeah, and maybe the only thought I would share for investors, it's the most unique conference I've been to where everyone is leaning in to see innovation succeed in medtech, whether it's the strategic investor or venture investor or early stage, the startup founders, clinical investors. Everyone's leaning in to see success, and it's really an amazing environment. So just enjoy the environment that is created by the LSI team, and enjoy the relationships that will be built. Henry, any closing thoughts from your side or Q&A that we need to close off on?
I am looking here. I think there are a couple of individual ones that I'll just address that are more mechanical. But no, I don't think that if there's any additional questions, feel free to send them in here. I'll ask this one. Tell me about how you guys have dealt with, just the schedule of meetings, right? When you have a packed schedule of meetings, if you end up not being able to make it, do you find that most of the people make it to your meeting? Do they not? If they're unable to make it, how do you then triage that and still make a productive introduction at the summit? Anything there? And then Tamir, there's some interest for you to talk a little bit about what J&J might be exploring these days, which you can give a high level on here, and then of course can take individually through the app later.
Yeah, happy to. I mean, most of what I can say is publicly available. So if you go to the J&J website or the JGDC website, you're going to see the areas that we are active in. I will try and save a lot of people time. As people have heard, we're spinning out, unfortunately, our orthopedics business, which is where I know my dear friends Nick and Chris from. But as you will see, we have very meaningful connections after they left J&J. So it's a business that's very close to my heart. I love it a lot, but unfortunately, it doesn't seem like we're going to invest any new investments in that space anytime soon. So just to keep that out there, outside of that, cardio, neuro, ophthalmology, robotics, surgery, these are the majority of areas we're active in. So I know it's general, but I don't want to take the stage from everybody here.
Great. And again, anyone, as you hear here, these folks are not only gracious with their time today, but excited to be at the summit and will be available on site. So encourage, if you have specific questions about their investment thesis, to do some homework, reach out to them ahead of the summit. to find out if a meeting is relevant and make the most of your time before and after the event. The last thing I'll add, and Nick, I steal this right from you, but just talk very, very practically speaking. How many meeting requests have you probably received as of 3 weeks out of the summit? And at what point are you probably full on meetings in terms of the dates and how they work out?
Mhm. I've probably got 50 or 60 already. I am careful with my calendar, and there's only so many I'm going to take during a day. That doesn't mean I don't want to meet with everyone else. So what I'll tell people is come to the investor breakfast, come to the lunches, come to the networking sessions, come to the parties we have Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday night in the presidential suite. There's plenty of opportunities, and we try to make ourselves available to meet with everybody who wants to meet with us. But again, don't get bummed out if you don't get a connection through the app. That doesn't mean we don't want them to meet with you. If you really want to find us and you think you're a good fit, then use one of the other opportunities, because again, we're all there for 4 or 5 days. Just track us down.
And starting early is huge. So we've sent out some resources to the innovators, to the investors. Start early. Schedules fill up. There's lots of opportunities on site for those sporadic meetings, but we're planning for over 20,000 one-on-one meetings like what you're hearing here. So we've got the space, we've got the mechanics, and looking forward to seeing everybody. And at 1 o'clock, we'll end it there. The recording of this will be available to everyone registered, so look out for that. And thank you again. Looking forward to seeing you all in Dana Point in March.